All right, this is on set.
It's over. The dream is alive for Houston. For the first time in 37 years, the Cougars are going to the Final Four. 67-61. Houston over Oregon State.
Other coaches do a great job of creating that atmosphere. Right. We don't have to create it.
You're actually family.
I needed to learn from him, the best coach and CEO in college basketball, and I never lost sight of that.
So we want to welcome you guys first and foremost to On Set. Stands for Sports, Entrepreneurship, and Technology. This is, again, second edition of Father and Son. Last weekend we had the Pearls on there with Bruce and Steve, and they spoke very highly of you guys and vice versa. This is the second Final Four that happened or occurred with the father and son in the Final Four. First it was the Pearls 2 years ago. Now you and Kellen this year. So we definitely want to welcome you guys. We want to talk about one, Kellen. How was it playing for your dad for 4 years at Oklahoma?
Yep, it was, life-changing in that, I'd grown my whole life looking up to his players. They were my heroes. We lived in Pullman, Washington, Norman, Oklahoma, so I wasn't hip to the NBA. That wasn't, I wasn't infatuated with the NBA growing up. I was infatuated with college basketball. That was my heroes. Those were the guys I looked up to, and the best players I always thought were his guys. And so to be considered one of his players was the thrill of a lifetime. I got there and I got to see a little different version of Dad. And it's interesting. My first day is he quit. There was a huge distinction. I never once thought of calling him Dad when we were in that world. It was always Coach.
How did that recruiting process go? Bruce joked around about him having to sleep with Steve's mom to get him to come play for him at Tennessee.
Kellen was a good high school point guard. Very heady, knew how to run the team, and he had a really, really good senior year. I remember we were playing at Texas A&M, and we took the charter back home, and I had the car waiting for me at the plane so I could get right to his game. And that was one of his better games. And I knew that he was going to get recruited by some small colleges. But when we sat down and talked, I asked him what he wanted to do. And no hesitation, he wanted to be a coach. And so we talked about coming in, walking on at first, earning a scholarship. But looking back, and I can say this honestly, Kellen was by far the best walk-on I ever had, because he won everything, every competitive drill we had, he won. For instance, the mile run. If you could run the mile in 5:05, 5:10, it's pretty good. Right. Well, he ran it in 4:50 something, because he knew as a walk-on, and being my son, he had to stand out as the hardest working guy. Suicides. I grew up in the Dean Smith era in North Carolina, and he had this point guard named Phil Ford. Okay. And I heard Phil Ford would run a 24-second suicide. And so Kellen runs a 25-something. But he'd always win the suicide. He'd win every competitive drill we had, and that's how he earned his respect.
So I know being a coach's son probably came with some, I don't want to say stress, but I'm sure you had to hear it from your teammates. What was that like as like this, you might be privileged or you're only here because of the coach, is your father?
Yeah.
How was that?
So one of the things is, like, I knew I couldn't talk my way into respect. Like, you had to earn it. And one of the hardest things was there were seniors, my freshman year of college, there were seniors that remember me when I was a ninth grader. They remember me when I was a 10th grader. And so the hardest thing was getting the older guys to view me as a fellow player, to view me as a teammate. Don't look at me as the kid that was 14, 15, just trying to hang around the locker room, hang out with the cool guys. Think of me as somebody you want to go to battle with. And so, like, that was the hardest year, my freshman year. Now, as I got, because I needed those older guys to, and I eventually got them to look at me as somebody that they could trust, not just a mole or somebody that was, part of the coaching staff. But to Coach's point, my upside was as a coach. It was not as a player. And so I think that, I embraced being on the white team. I didn't walk in with this expectation I was going to be on the red team. My goals were always centered on, what does the team, the program need from me? And because of that, hey, look, they need me to be the rabbit in the mile. Hey, I can do that. I'm never going to play above the rim. I'm not going to make a game winner at Kansas. That's not in the equation for me. But I can, hey, look, if I can stay in unbelievable shape all year long to where I can always push these guys in the off season, in the summer, hey, I can make a difference that way. And I appreciate the fact that our program valued that role. And I think that's one of the things I try to do here at Houston is pick really good walk-ons and pick guys that can do that for our program, because it helps us, maybe not game night, but it helps us 365, 12 months a year.
Absolutely. Coach, Michigan State, Montana Tech, Washington State, Indiana, NBA here, Oklahoma here. What is the biggest difference in the year now, 2021, mixtape kids and all the hype and all that stuff? What's the biggest difference between Michigan State in '82 till now, 2021?
Well,
as far as basketball is concerned.
Yeah. Well, I was just a 22-year-old youngster when I went to Michigan State. I actually went there on a academic scholarship. It's the only way I could get there. I remember, my parents were, my mother was a nurse, my father was a high school basketball coach, and I had 3 sisters, so it was 4 of us, and they didn't have the money to front me, so I remember going, my father co-signed the loan to help me pay my way through Michigan State. But my first year there was Magic Johnson's sophomore year.
Wow.
So I got to watch a national championship team. And then the following year, I got more responsibilities, and back then they had JV teams. So I got to be the assistant coach on the JV team, and I didn't think it got any better than that. I mean,
right.
I'm a little country boy from North Carolina. I'm sitting here watching Gregory Kelser, Magic Johnson, Jay Vincent, all them cats.
Right.
And in the Big Ten that year, there's some great players came through. But it helped jumpstart me in that the head coach on the JV team got the head job at Montana Tech.
Right.
I didn't know where Montana was.
I'm sure.
I'd heard of it.
Right.
But I'd had to get a map to tell you where it was. But he got the job there. The head coach at Michigan State was a guy by the name of Judd Heathcote. And Judd's freshman year in college, when he finished high school in Washington, was at Montana Tech. I go out there with Fred for a stipend, didn't have a salary, just got married, no kids. So me and my wife, we looked at it as an adventure. We rented a U-Haul truck, the smallest U-Haul truck they had, and we put everything we owned in the back of that truck, and recruited a kid from Michigan to go with us.
Yeah.
So he drove her car, I was towing my Jeep, and here we go, Michigan to Montana. That was, back then U-Hauls had governors, so you could only go 55 miles an hour. So I think it was 1,700 miles at 55 miles an hour. We spent one night in a hotel. The recruit slept on the floor, and my wife and I slept on the bed. Got up the next morning about 4 o'clock, boom, we out. I said, we got to get there. I was there August, September, October, November. December, the guy I went with, he and his wife was having some struggles, so he resigned. And they came and said, we want you to be the interim head coach. I was 25 years old. And that's how I got started. We did good, got to Washington State, did good. Got to Oklahoma, did good. Got to Indiana, did good. And, but probably the best learning experience I had was in the NBA. I was with the Spurs for about 3 months with them through a playoff run. Then with Scott Skiles in Milwaukee for 3 years, and then Kevin McHale and the Rockets for 3 years. But that was like taking a sabbatical for me. I knew how to coach college basketball, and I thought I knew how to coach pro basketball, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I was humble enough to realize that. But Scott Skiles was the best tactician, strategist. He made me think.
Did your time in the NBA influence how you coach now at Houston?
Absolutely.
So you've changed things since. And you were a great coach before then, but.
Yeah. I don't think, I think I was college coaches tend to be micromanagers. I think the thing that I learned in the NBA was
Let them play.
let them play and understand the importance of the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. I started breaking the game down. In college we have a 30-second shot clock. But in the NBA, everything is secondary. Secondary break, secondary break, secondary break. Scoring in that first 10 seconds. And that really influenced me. Then when I got to Houston, learning how to take advantage of matchups. I was the associate head coach for the Rockets, so I got to assign the assistants, all the scouts. Chris Finch, who's now the head coach for Minnesota, and J.B. Bickerstaff is now the head coach for Cleveland, and myself, we were the 3 assistants. And so what I did was take who I thought the best head coaches that ran the best stuff, and I took those scouts. Terry Stotts in Portland, Doc Rivers in Boston, Rick Carlisle in Dallas. And I learned from them. I learned more scouting other teams and just sitting there watching film and watching how they do things. I remember we scout in Dallas. I loved how Carlisle used Dirk Nowitzki and Jason Kidd. And then when he got Vince Carter, he started throwing another wrinkle in. And I said, wow, look at this. And so I would start playing with stuff. And I knew that when I went back to college, it was going to be a whole new ballgame, especially spacing. College coaches know spacing, but I don't think that they live it and breathe it like NBA do. Colleges want to run continuity, continuity, continuity. And then here you go, 8 seconds on the shot clock, we're getting the shot. And what the NBA influenced me on was play faster, try to score earlier, and let your players play to their strengths.
How was it, Kellen, from transitioning to playing for your dad to going straight in? Because you went straight into coaching with your dad. So it's a little different because we joke around with Stephen Pearl. We told him he sold drugs because he went from Tennessee to being in pharmaceutical sales. So we joke around with him, say you went from selling drugs to being an assistant coach with your dad. So how was it for you transitioning from playing for him to coaching with him?
Stephen was a pretty good player.
Yeah.
And he had some game. I didn't. And so, like, I didn't have these wild I knew I was in school to be a coach.
Okay.
So it actually helped me that I always knew why I was a player at Oklahoma. I was so interested and intrigued with what the coaches were doing. And growing up, I remember sitting at the top of the steps listening to my dad make recruiting phone calls, or, I was so blessed in that he let me tag along for everything as a little kid. And so I was a part of their recruiting meetings. I was a part of the team meetings. And so in so many ways, I was more prepared to be a graduate assistant and an assistant coach than I really was to be a player. Because I was always in love with the coaching side of things. I had to learn how to love it as a player. That didn't always come natural to me. But when I became a graduate assistant for him at Indiana, it was almost as if I was finally fulfilling what I always wanted to do. It was the end of, I finally had gone through the process to what I wanted to do my whole life. And I'd seen him handle and talk with so many assistant coaches that I had a feel for what an assistant coach needed to do, how they needed to be proactive, what things was Coach looking for each and every day from his assistant coaches. And so in so many ways, I felt as if I was prepared to be as graduate assistant. Now, obviously, there was a learning curve, and I had to understand, exactly how to do the job. But I was ready to see him in that light. I was blown away at how awesome of a CEO he was. I knew he was a great coach. That part, I saw that every day as a player. But to see him as a CEO and his mastery of every aspect and component of the program, I was blown away. I couldn't believe how much he was in control of everything. And it just reaffirmed that this is what I wanted to do, and that I needed to learn from him. I just wasn't, working for my dad. I wasn't just assuming the family business. I was working for the best coach and CEO in college basketball, and I never lost sight of that.
One thing I like about you guys and thought it was a cool story, a good friend of mine, Rossi Karen, we went out to see you guys play March Madness, and one thing I liked was the hug. That's what they call it. And I thought that was cool because I'm a huge family guy. So me and my wife started the company, the 7 Group, sports event company. We have brought college basketball to the city of Atlanta for the first time in 20 years. Rossi has a college event here in Houston at the Toyota Center. But the hug is because we talked to Bruce about it, is his staff is like family, but it's him, Steve, and you got Wes, Ira, and those guys, and it's like a family. But for you guys, it's really family. It's Kellen, you have your daughter, and I think it's a couple other that you got, all that work at the University of Houston. So how did that come about?
When I came back from the NBA, I didn't know, I had lost touch a little bit with college basketball for various reasons, but I didn't know who to hire as assistant coach. My first hire was Kellen, and then I was also an assistant coach for the Canadian senior national team with a guy by the name of Jay Triano. And while I was working with the Canadian team, ran across a video guy named Casey Beard. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna offer Casey the video job. Then after that, I wasn't quite sure. I inherited Alvin Brooks and a couple other guys, but Alvin was the only one I was serious about, but I wanted to see him work for a while before I made a commitment. And then the thing I liked about Alvin was his own man. He was like a team that played controlled basketball. You couldn't speed him up. You weren't going to slow him down from what he was doing, but you weren't going to speed him up. He worked at his own pace, but he was really, really good at that. So I had to learn him. Then I talked to the other guys about who to hire, and wound up hiring a guy that was good, but I decided after a couple years that everybody on this staff, I wanted to be I had so many former players that wanted to get into coaching. And then I have so many guys from Houston that played at Duke or North Carolina or Michigan, wherever. They were finishing their careers up, and they were calling me saying, I'd like to get back into college coaching, and could you give me an opportunity? And I started thinking, I got Hollis Price, who played for me at Oklahoma, Quantas White, who played for me at Oklahoma, Aaron McGee, who played for me there, some guys from Washington State, Indiana. If I don't hire these guys, who's going to hire them? Right. So I said, I'm going to keep it in the family. So my starting point guard on that Final Four team and another Elite Eight team was Quantas White. He's the other assistant along with Kellen. Hollis Price, who's going to tag team, I moved him up to replace Alvin along with Casey Beard. My daughter was the director of sports marketing at the College of Charleston for 2 years. Okay. And then she got sidetracked into something else, but I knew she was unhappy. So it took me a couple years, but I got Lauren doing all my external stuff, and she's outstanding. Kellen, Hollis, Quantas, KC. Mikkel McLean, who I inherited from Coach Dickey, I hired him. So when you look at our staff, everybody that works for the University of Houston's family. So when we recruit a kid and we talk to him about we have a family atmosphere, our family atmosphere is different than other people's. Other coaches do a great job of creating that atmosphere.
Right.
Well, we don't have to create it.
You're actually family.
It's there. When I, like yesterday, we were sitting in a recruiting meeting, and you look around, there's Kellen, Quantas, Hollis, KC. I got my gang. That's my boys. I mean, we roll them with our guys. I wouldn't trade my staff for anybody's staff. Every head coach should think they have a great staff. If they don't, then go get one. Right. But I think I have the best staff in college basketball. The number one key for an assistant coach is loyalty. He's got to take a bullet for you. And then if the head coach knows that that staff will take a bullet for you, you know you're going to take a bullet for them. But the thing I like best, Chris, is that when we sign a young man to come into our program, he's going to be taken care of. Right. You know, I tell, one of the rules I have with my assistant coaches is I don't like surprises. You know, we don't have to be their life, but they are our life, 24/7, 365. There's no such thing as I'm going to take a break and get away for a while. No, man. Your break is the phone, texting, calling, making sure you know what's going on. With this transfer portal, we have to spend more time recruiting our kids than worry about who we're bringing in sometime. Like the 3 freshmen I have, Robbie Armbruster, Ramon Walker, and JVA Francis. Those guys need us, and we need them. So when they get here in June, they're going to get a dose of University of Houston basketball. We have a great culture. Our older kids do a great job of teaching those younger kids. Because one day, Robbie, Ramon, and JVA is going to be sophomores and juniors. Right. And here comes another freshman class in that they've got to mentor. So my staff does a great job of mentoring. And I don't mind saying this, when Kellen was a little boy coming up, my top 2 assistants was Jason Rabideau, who became head coach at UTEP, was coach of the year his first year. Ray Lopes became the head coach at Fresno State, coach of the year his first year. And those are the guys that Kellen looked up to. Now, Kellen is Jason Rabideau or Ray Lopes. Quantas is those guys. But Kellen's the best assistant I've ever had because he checks all the boxes. His greatest strength is how much he cares for the players. Right. He goes the extra mile. If I were a mother or a father, I would feel so comfortable knowing that my son is going to be taken care of by the Sampsons and the Sampson family.
So going back to the family, making it to the Final Four, taking University of Houston to the Final Four for the first time since 1984, and sharing that special moment where you hugged Kellen and your daughter after that win to go on to the Final Four. I mean, that had to be an amazing feeling, not just for you, but also for you, Kellen. Like, let's talk about that. Like, how was that feeling?
Just a culmination of just a build, you know, and I think that, you know, one of the reasons it was so emotional, two reasons. He believed in me as a coach when I had just gotten fired. You know, he talks about I was his first hire. And, you know, up to that point in my career, maybe I hadn't earned it. You know, I was at Stephen F. Austin, and we go to Appalachian State, and I had just gotten, part of staff had gotten fired. And he believed enough in me that I was his first hire. So I was the guy that he felt he could build this program with. At that time, there wasn't a lot of head coaches who thought of me in that way.
He knew something they didn't.
Absolutely. And so it was emotional in that regard. I remember what our first couple of days at U of H felt like and looked like. And we walked out. We had a team meeting. It was a full locker room. By the time we got to the press conference, 45 minutes later, 2 had walked out the back door. By the time we did a team workout later that afternoon, 2 more had walked out. So we went from 13 to 11 to 9. We couldn't even do a team workout because we didn't have enough. We didn't have 10. Did a team workout. By the time we did our second team workout the next day, we were down to 4. when we were playing 2-on-2. That was our
Hard to run sets with 2-on-2.
like that was our first 25 hours, and so nobody wanted to be a part of the build, and some of these guys were leaving. Hey, coach, I just want to go. I don't want to be bad. I don't want to, so there was no trust or belief in us that we could be good year one. That's what they were saying that they didn't say, and so here we go off. We got nothing, but we don't have good facilities. We don't have any program cachet. There's nothing sexy about Houston at the time, and all we had was at the coach, myself, Alvin Brooks. So that was the only ones that we had hired. Casey came later that first week, and then Hollis Price came that next week. And we didn't have anything. All we had was 9 scholarships and a promise of playing time. To go from April of 2014, and you fast forward to April of 2021, and I've spent my whole life wanting to be a college coach. So I think I understood the magnitude, and I had such a crazy appreciation for the Final Four. I know what it meant as a coach. I know what plateau it puts you on as a program. And to be able to do that with my dad,
Right.
but also somebody who believed in me, maybe when I didn't believe in myself. That's where just the huge rush of emotion, and then just the journey my sister's been on, and the process of her rediscovering and finding herself, and the job that she does for our program, keeping us relevant social media-wise, 365, 24 hours a day, 365, and the investment she has in the program. I think it's, part of our secret sauce here at Houston is everybody that is in our program, their investment is 10 toes deep. We don't have anybody that, we don't know. Hollis Price I've known since I was 12 years old, and Quantas White since I was 14 years old. But part of the secret sauce of us is our continuity. Alvin Brooks just got the head job at Lamar, and that's awesome. But for 7 years, we've had the same staff. And so that moment was the culmination of 7 years together fighting. That moment was 7 years of a lot of no's and a lot of not nows and a lot of, well, maybe. That hug was just everybody who said yes, and just being thankful and gratitude to my dad, Coach Sampson, my sister, everybody that just believed in us when nobody would.
And when I seen it, I told Rossi, I was like, man, I got to go to Houston to get the Sampsons on the show. I was like, so I called my guy Swan, and he was like, man, I got the perfect spot, black-owned spot out in Houston, called the Gentleman Spot, owned by Paco, JT, Melvin Jones, all those guys. Beautiful spot, as you can see. But it was just, I knew I had to get out there and get you guys on the show. So, Coach, how did you feel about it? I mean, because it's one thing to make it there, but, you made it there actually with your family, with Kellen and your son and your daughter. How was that, that feeling at the time?
Yeah, I think everything starts as a coach. I think coaches believe in themselves, but I think there's different levels of belief. When I was at Montana Tech, the reason they hired me was because it was such a bad job. If it was a good job, they'd have never hired me. Come on now. They ain't people that look like me in Montana.
Very true.
So when I took the job, I thought I could do good, but I had no idea what good meant when I was 25 years old. But that school had never had a winning season, ever. We went 4-23 my first year, and then the Monday after the season, I got a call from the conference office saying that a school in our league played an eligible player. So we got 3 wins. So we actually went 7-20. We won more games in 20 seconds than we did damn near in 4 months. I said, dang, I need another call. We can get to 500 with this thing. But having, we go 7-20, 22-8, 22-9, 22-8 again. So we won 3 consecutive championships at an engineering college where every degree curriculum required a minimum of 30 credits of math. So now I go to Washington State as an assistant. I'm 28 years old. The head coach leaves after 2 years and takes the job at Nevada, University of Nevada, because he thought he had a better chance to get in the NCAA tournament. Right. We had just finished 10th in the Pac-10, I think, for 2 straight years. So he leaves. Judd Heathcote graduated from Washington State. He calls them and says, "You have no idea how hard it is to win at Montana Tech. Kelvin's not going to be intimidated by that job." So we go to Washington State. The last 4 years there, I think we averaged 18 or 19 wins, get to the NCAA tournament. That led to Oklahoma. So when we got to Houston, and what Kellen said was right, apathy, no facilities, no respect. Right. When I say no respect, I mean no respect. People, you can always tell where your program is, I think, in a city by the respect or the attention you get from the AAU coaches. Mm-hmm. And these AAU coaches here respected us, but they didn't respect the program. So we're recruiting kids off the team I think can help us, and they're trying to sell me on dudes that were probably Division II schools, right. Division II kids. I don't know about him, but Coach, you should look at this guy.
Because they felt it fit
Yo,
more.
Man,
right.
What you mean look at him? Come on now, we're trying to win, and you trying to sell me on Johnny over here.
Get you fired.
Johnny can't play. You know, I want Jimmy. Jimmy over here is the one I want. Yeah, because I don't know if you can get him. He wants to go to a big time school. They'd actually say stuff to us like that. And all that did was just I always had a chip on my shoulder now. And that chip's just started growing.
He said they said, "Hey, Coach, I think you should let. I think he can help you. Help us? How bad are we?"
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to sell walk-ons to us. So,
no offense to walk-ons, but you know, makes the world work.
Yeah, we need a good walk-on, but not to play.
And that point got made to me really early in my playing career.
I mean, as a coach, you almost got to be like the guys that own this spot, as a visionary. Yeah. You got to be a visionary as far as where you can see the program, just like entrepreneurs. You got to see where your business can go.
Well, when I talked to the AD, who ironically is the AD at Baylor now, Mac Rhodes. He was the AD that hired me, and I talked to the president of the university, and as they were trying to sell me on the basketball program, they were doing a good job, but they weren't being honest. So I interjected and said, "No, it's not. This is not a good program. The last 16 years, you've had 4 coaches. That means they're averaging 4 years, right. 4 years each. Right. So what's going to be different? Your gym is antiquated. You don't have a practice facility. Students don't even know where the gym is. They don't come to games. What's going to change?" But that's where my vision came in. I'd been in the Pac-10, the Big 12, and the Big 10. As a head coach, I knew what a program looked like. You know, we won at a high level at Washington State. We won at a high level at Oklahoma and Indiana. So now I'm coming here, and I said, this is a blank sheet of paper, and I loved it. But I had to get to the AD and the president to get them to understand where we were. So I remember meeting with the AD one day, and I walked in with a sheet of paper, and I wrote down who I thought the top 5 teams in the league were, and I wrote down who I thought the bottom of the league were. And so I split the paper in 2, and I put it on his desk, and I said, "Which one are we? Who do you want to be? You want to be these guys or these guys? Connecticut, Cincinnati, Memphis."
SMU at the time.
SMU at the time. High-level programs. Then over here, you had the rest of the schools, and Houston was toward the bottom. And I said, the first thing we got to do is build a practice facility. So I talked to my agent, and the way we structured the contract was we had milestones that they had to meet for the facility. For instance, on this date, a construction fence had to be up. On this date, dirt had to be dug. On this date, the structure. And if not, I agreed to a unbelievable buyout. I think my buyout was almost $2 million. But every time one of those milestones was not met, it came down $250,000. So there was an agreement that they were going to build that practice facility where I wasn't going to be here.
So that's a hell of a negotiation.
Absolutely. But I felt like I was on track to be a head coach in the NBA. Matter of fact, Kellen was talking about that first day after the press conference. I had Daryl Morey and James Harden and Pat Beverly, those three guys came to the press conference. So I'm talking, and we were getting ready to go into the playoffs, and they were trying to negotiate with the NBA where I could stay with the Rockets through the playoffs with Portland, but I couldn't. But after that first workout, I almost went back and called Daryl. I said, yo, I don't know about this place here. I thought, they were selling me on this guy, and this guy, and by the time we got to 4 o'clock the afternoon of the press conference, this guy, and this guy weren't there. They had gone off somewhere else. And a part of me understood that. They wanted to go play in the tournament. They didn't think we could. I got that. But the Mack Rhodes started it. I give Mack Rhodes a lot of credit. He went to bat, and he showed me the plans for the practice facility. And we had just built one at Indiana, and we built one at Oklahoma. And I said, we've got to change this. Right. You can't have a facility that's shared with men and women basketball. Women's basketball deserves their own facilities. We deserve our own facilities. So we built an immaculate place, $25 million investment right away. Now we're starting to get respect. But I think the thing that changed everything was when I went to lunch with Tillman Fertitta. Tillman's a busy guy. He's got an amazing restaurant downtown. One of the Board of Regents set me up with him. I didn't know who he was until they started talking to me about him. And I told him he was looking at his phone and talking to me and eating lunch, so he's multitasking, and I'm one-tasking. I need this guy. I need this guy to believe. I need this guy to believe in me that we can get this done. So you know what I said? Tillman, I think we win a national championship here. Say what? It's one of those deals. But long story short, he wrote a check for $20 million to put his name onto Fertitta Center. It was called the Hofheinz Arena. Pavilion, Hofheinz Pavilion. And it was bad. Everybody knows it was bad. I'm not dogging it, I'm just telling the truth.
We had more rodents at games than fans.
Is that bad?
Yeah. Somebody said Jimmy Hoffa was buried in the bottom of that thing somewhere.
We had a practice once where our strength coach made all these post-practice shakes and smoothies. He put it behind this wall that was there. Like there was a brick wall that that encompassed the court. He put the smoothies there while practice ended. Practice went a little longer. He looked back, 5-10 minutes later, and there was a family of rats that were drinking the smoothies.
All that.
Like they were that comfortable. Like, hey, look, you guys are visitors in our house. I mean, and that's where we came from as a program.
And that was part of the hug.
And then
we knew where we started. We knew what we had to do. But people started believing in us, the AAU coaches. But there was one kid that we recruited from Westbury Christian High School that I give a lot of credit, and Kellen calls him the Godfather. But at a time when we didn't have the facilities, all we had was drawings of what it was going to look like. And we had an easel, and we had all these little drawings on it. We could flip it over and show him, this is what it's going to look like. And he was getting recruited by some pretty good schools. He decided to come here. His name was Galen Robinson Jr. Galen is the Godfather. We get a lot of credit, but this thing's all about the players, man. Right. Galen Robinson gave us credibility. When he came, he gave the other kids in Houston permission to come too. Right. And the next thing you know, Damian Dotson is out at Oregon. He's right down the street. We're in the 3rd Ward. We're right there in it.
In the trenches, right?
That's right. And Damian went to Yates High School right there in the 3rd Ward. He decided to come. Now all of a sudden we're gaining more credibility. Chris Harris came. We started recruiting these Houston kids. When the Houston kids believed in us, it forced everybody else to get excited about us. Chris Harris Galen Robinson, Damian Dotson, who were the other?
Fabian White.
Fabian White from Atascocita. And we said, well, you know what? We're going to recruit inside out. We're going to recruit the best Houston kids. In the last 5 years, they give this award every year called the Guy V. Lewis Award, the top player, high school player in the city of Houston. We've gotten the Guy V. Lewis Award winner for the last 5 years. Quentin Grimes, Tremont Mark, Galen, and Ramon Walker. And there's a good chance we may get the one coming out this year. But based on our recruiting here in Houston, now we've got the AAU coaches. They don't tell us about the walk-ons. They tell us about their best players now.
Let me ask you this. So I'm sure it's the same way here, but like in coaching circles, if you hear a kid is going to Houston, they've got to be a tough kid. It's not like I might say somebody's going to X school and they say whatever. But if you say that a kid is getting recruited or they're going to Houston, oh, that's a Kevin Sampson type kid. That's a tough kid. What goes into bringing that type of culture into your program? Like, how do you guys form that?
Well, that's one of the advantages of having Kellen and Quantas and Hollis on staff, because they've lived it. You know, some schools recruit, and then some schools, and I think we're in this category, evaluate and recruit. We have to evaluate whether that kid fits us. Right. You know, we can't. You know, there's a lot of kids that are really good that are a little soft. We usually do good against schools like that. You know, if you look at, I think the 3 winningest schools. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kellen. I think the 3 winningest schools in the United States in Division I the last 3 years is Gonzaga, Houston, and Virginia.
Yep.
I think we've won 111 games. But the reason why we've
do you think that, or do you know that?
That's a fact, right?
He's a mathematician. He's really good with numbers.
I believe it.
He's really good with facts. This is the world's greatest trivia conqueror ever.
I believe it.
So like people argue like ideas and concept. He argues facts.
Yeah, I have to tell them, you know, these young cats, all they know is Steph Curry and LeBron and Durant, and I have to tell them a little bit about Kareem. You know what I'm saying, Kareem? Yeah. But the toughness thing has become our mantra, and it started, I think, at Montana Tech and Washington State, because we couldn't out-talent people. We had to outwork them, and that goes along with the philosophy of our program. So when we watch kids play, and we take some kids that their talent is a high level, but I think we can do good with them, like Quentin Grimes from Kansas. When Quentin came here, I didn't think he was the most competitive kid, but I thought he was a great kid. High character kids can handle adversity. Knuckleheads, kids is always on the verge of trouble, immature kids, we don't do good with those kind of kids. But I like kids with an edge. You know, some coaches are afraid to coach certain kids. I love coaching those kind of kids. You know, I can make a difference in that kid's life. Dejan Giroux, this kid was from the hood in New Orleans. I mean, he had it tough. There wasn't 6 months that went by since he's here, he didn't have a friend that was shot. I mean, he's had it to his grandmother. During the Final Four, he had a kid that passed away. But I relate to those kind of kids. You know, those are my kids. And I've had those kind of kids wherever we went. You can get those kids to chew wood and spit it at you. And that's what our program's all about. We say this all the time. Before we went on the floor to play, when we left here March 11th to go to the conference tournament, we played Tulane, Memphis, Cincinnati, right? Win the conference tournament. And then NCAA tournament, Cleveland State, Rutgers, Syracuse, Oregon State, Baylor. Before every one of those games, the last thing we talked about is the best team's not going to win this game. It's going to be the toughest team. We went 7-1 in those games, and it was true every one of them. We were tougher than every one of those teams except Baylor. Baylor was the toughest, best team we've played in the 7 years we've been in Houston. They're special. That Davion Mitchell kid, Butler, Teague, Flagler, Mayer, Vidal, tough. I love that team. I didn't like getting my butt beat by them, especially when we got beat. But sometimes you got to take your hat off and say, respect. I love that team. To me, that's the best team. We took Kentucky down to the last 10 seconds. We've beaten Ohio State, Arkansas, LSU, Oregon, beat all those teams. Best team we've seen is Baylor. That's a unique team.
I think one of the things with toughness is Coach gives us permission to turn down talented kids if they don't have toughness. I think that's when we're evaluating and watching it, we're evaluating your toughness. We're evaluating whether or not it's a good fit. And we're okay with not recruiting a certain kid if he doesn't possess certain intangibles.
That's interesting because I know as an assistant coach, you want to have this 5-star on campus and this 4-star and all those type of things. But if he's not your type of player, you just can't.
It's just not going to work.
And that's crazy because so when we was with Adidas, like I said, one of my favorite players was Quentin Grimes. Yep. He was soft, but I blame Rossi for that. He was kind of soft, great player, but soft. He went to Kansas, came back home to Houston, fit the mold for you guys, and now he's about to go to the league. So it's like Kansas is a good school, nothing against Kansas, but him coming back home and playing for Houston, you guys was a blessing for just his career moving forward now.
So like one of the things like for us is like your first year on campus, you got to learn how to bite back. Right. We're gonna have some older dogs in the playpen with you, and they've already learned how to bite. And as you mature and as you grow in our program, you'll learn to bite first. Right. But you don't know how to bite first when you first walk through the door because everybody's always biting you, and that is a journey and a process as you come through the program. And part of our evaluation is, does the kid really believe in us, that he's going to stick through the process? Quentin Grimes is a great example. His first year, he had some ups and downs. But his second year, he exploded.
That's the first time you guys, Houston, had a McDonald's All-American, right?
We had one when we first got here, Devontae Pollard.
Okay. Transferred from
Alabama. But this was, Devontae's we had to do some spit shining on that one. Quentin was a little bit more high profile.
For sure, yeah.
A little bit more high profile. And Quentin was talented for us his first year. It was, and he had some monster games. He had 25 in the first half against Georgia Tech, and he had his highs were really good highs. Q had some lows that year that were growing moments for him. But Q turned a corner. The longer you spend in our program, the longer you spend with Coach Sampson, you're going to develop an edge. Right. You're going to develop the ability. Again, you don't learn to hit first around here or hit back around here. You have to learn to hit first and hit second. And if the other kid doesn't get a chance to hit you, you're probably going to win.
That's one of the reasons I sent y'all Robbie. Like I told you, he's a little bit off now. I love him to death, like my son. Robbie's my guy. But Robbie's going to hit, and he's going to keep hitting, so y'all going to have to tell him to stop hitting.
No.
He's going to play.
You don't recruit kids that they don't have the ability to hit first.
Well, the thing about Quentin,
it's part of the evaluation.
The other thing about Quentin, too, was, and this is why I think he succeeded, is you didn't have to make him go to the gym. Right. One of the things I have written on our whiteboard in our office, in our conference room, is we have to be the gym rats. If a kid's not a gym rat, we got to make him gym rat. You never had to make Quentin go in the gym. He loved basketball. He didn't understand what being competitive was. Right. Like every drill we do, there's nothing in our practice, even layups. We do full court layups where you have to take 2 or 3 dribbles 94 feet and lay it in. That means you get a running start, get the ball in net, you're gone. That's a competition. Our daily ball handling drills is a competition. 1 minute passing drill is a competition. So every drill we do, there's a winner and there's a loser. And we keep track of who's winning and losing. There was one week when Quentin first got here that his record was probably 2-18. Now, one thing he was doing was he winning. I said, son, This is not an involvement thing. This is a commitment thing. Right. You got to learn to win.
The fact about kids competing these days, the way that we grew up playing basketball and some of the older folks, we started getting better when we started playing with older guys, and we would play a whole bunch of pickup and, going to the park, and if you don't win, you're not playing for the next 5 games. And so there's a natural competitiveness that comes with that. A lot of kids these days, way more skilled than we may have come up because they train since they're 7. Do you think that affects the fact that they are not as competitive as some of the older guys, how we came up?
And I'm going to give Kellen credit for this because he came up with the idea. In the off season, we're allowed, I think they've got it up to 8 hours a week that we can work with these kids, but we have to split that with the weight room, and we're big on the weight room here. But we noticed that the guys that work out with trainers are high turnover guys because they don't know how to read defenses. They haven't been put in that position. So what they know how to do is catch it and shoot it, shot, fake, one dribble, pull up. Okay, this time I want you to go here, go between your legs, then one dribble there. Come on, man. What are we training for? Right. So what we do, and this is Kellen's idea, is 4 hours a week, we put our kids in 4-on-4 where they play in space. We don't play with a 5-man. Yeah. We make the 5-man play behind the 3-point line so they have to defend on the perimeter. Yeah. But we keep track of turnovers and we keep track of assists. So what we're doing is teaching kids how to play basketball. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't get in the gym, work with them on their shooting, but we value being able to drive it, defender comes over to help, what's your decision? Right. Who's open? Right. How do you read the corners? When I was with the Spurs, it's amazing how many times Tony Parker didn't decide to pass it to the corners until he realized he was under the net. And he didn't even look. He knew those guys were going to be in the corner. And that's what we try to get our guys to do is learn how to play basketball. Guys with high basketball IQ usually make good decisions. Like we had a kid here who was all-time leading scorer when he left, Rob Gray. Rob Gray was a great finisher, but he's also a great passer. Dejan Giroux, when he came in here, he was a good passer, but he's also an equally good turnover guy. He'd have 95 assists and 89 turnovers. This year, I think he had 135 assists and only 68 turnovers. That's how much he improved. But a lot of it had to do with breaking down the defense and learning to be a decision maker. You can't be a good decision maker being trained by a trainer. Right. The only way you can do that is play basketball.
I think it's the bones versus cones theory. You got to learn to play against somebody with some bones and a heartbeat. If all you're doing is attacking a cone, there's only so much better you're going to get. Not only is it not, it's a laboratory. Basketball's not played in a laboratory. Basketball's played with your emotion. Basketball's played with your heart. Basketball, when you're talking about, development, most people talk about a tangible statistic or a tangible, I've improved this. Development is, did you get tougher? Did you get more competitive? Does winning mean more to you than your opponent? You're only doing that if you're going against somebody. You learn to handle your emotions in the off season. You learn to out-compete, outwork, out-fight somebody in the off season. You don't do that if somebody's just pitching balls at you.
And one of the things that I'm proud of and pleased with is the referrals we get now. Like we just signed a kid from Texas Tech, Kyler Edwards. Now we recruited Kyler out of high school, so we knew about him, and we scrimmaged Texas Tech every year. We played him last year, so we knew him. But we have so many kids now that's calling us. Their AAU coach or their high school coach or their parent that are high-level players because they see our program. They know what kind of kid fits in our program. And that's where we have to be careful evaluating. It's like Robbie. The more film I watched on Robbie, I have no idea what position he plays. But I had a kid that played in NBA for 12 years at Oklahoma by the name of Eduardo Nájera. First Hispanic. I had no idea what position he played. When I looked at Robbie, I see Eduardo. When I saw him in high school, he was about 6'6" and weighed about 195 pounds. He wasn't a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's a player. So somebody says, where will Eduardo play? I said, on the floor.
Positionless basketball.
Yeah, he's going to play on the floor. Well, I don't know, man. Why are you worrying about that? You know, he'll play where we need him. Because I know one thing, he's going to knock your head off, and he's going to get 10 rebounds. That's a tough boy. I remember we played Arizona. We were a 13 seed. Arizona was a 4 seed. I don't remember the year. 1999. They had Jason Terry, Richard Jefferson,
Michael Wright,
Lauren
Dickerson.
Woods.
Michael Dickerson?
He had just left.
Lauren Woods.
It was the year after.
They had a bunch
Bibby
of
Dickerson. It was the year after that. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And we beat them. We beat them because of guys like Eduardo. If I told you who the other guys were, well, we had another guy that transferred and got drafted in the NBA at Notre Dame, but the rest of that team, you wouldn't remember any of their names, but they would knock your head off. Right. And that's, and I'm sure Arizona was favored by 10 points or more, but the reason we won that game was not because we were better, because we were tougher.
And then as I coached, where we coached, it meant more for me to somebody to say, boy, y'all got a tough team than, boy, that kid can play. When they say you got a tough team, as a coach, you feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I did, you know what I'm saying? We did that. You know what I mean?
I don't know if we've lost to a finesse team in 7 years. You know, a lot of opposing when they play, when they start their preparation for us, they've got to prepare their team for a certain level of physicality. It's really hard to prepare for us if you only start on Houston week. We're preparing how we play 12 months of the year.
And that goes back to the national championship. Yeah, Gonzaga was a great team, don't get me wrong. But I knew the national champion was going to be either you guys or Baylor because of strict toughness wins championships. Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
Well, even if you go back to Michael Jordan's years with Chicago, Michael Jordan's, to me, his greatest strength wasn't his talent. Right. It was his competitiveness. Right. You combine that talent, that competitive, now you've created a monster. Yeah. You know, and he rubbed off on the other players. He brought them up to his level. And that's what this particular team was about. But the thing we appreciate, too, is that we're getting calls about kids from people that recognize how we play, that this kid would fit here. So when we evaluate him, I keep going back to Robbie, the more I watched Robbie, the more I said, he's one of us. He's got an edge to him. Is he a little crazy? Crazy don't scare me. You know, I'm a little crazy in practice sometimes. That's okay. But is he tough?
I remember calling Kellen. I was like, man, I'm going to send you Robbie. I said, I think he needs what you guys can do for him growing up without a father in his life, a male figure outside of us as far as on the AAU side, but just growing up just as his mom or his aunt raising him. I said, he needs you guys. He said, you sure? Because he had a ton of offers. I said, Kellen, I'm sending them to you. He said, you sure? I said, yeah. So Robbie called you.
Shocked us.
I remember we had the Zoom. We all had the Zoom call.
I'm thinking this is going to be a process. Next thing I'm coming. What? Say what?
Are you coming to visit or yeah?
What you mean you coming? I'm committing.
Because I'm committing. To here?
Yeah.
Cool. Hey.
After that thing was over, I looked at Kellen. We just got Robbie Armbruster, right? He coming. I said, that's a pretty good get right there.
Absolutely. So we do this thing now on the show where we call it off topic, and it's off topic of basketball and all that kind of stuff.
And unfortunately, this was Drew's idea, but unfortunately, this is the second week in a row that we've talking about racism. Yeah. With Bruce and Steve, we talked about the All-Star game being taken away from Atlanta due to the new laws there. But it's called off topic. Drew's idea, and Drew have the topic this week for you guys. So
speak a little bit about, I mean, obviously what happened in Minnesota this week, and just kind of where we are as a country. It seems like these things type of happen, and then we feel like maybe things are a little bit different, and then it just seems to happen all over again, and you go right back to the place like this just doesn't make any sense. Talk to us a little bit about that.
You know, when we bring a kid on campus, and Lauren is in charge of this, we have different people come speak to our team. social media experts talk to them about the importance of understanding the send button. What you're sending represents something bigger than you. We have the campus police come in. I make sure we have white officers and black officers come in and give different perspectives. We have bankers come in because all of a sudden our kids are getting big checks every month, and they need to know what a savings account is and a checking account, and absolutely no credit cards. We assume kids don't know, and our job is to teach. Make sure you're going to get a million things now. You apply for this card. They have no idea what this is. So we deal in cash with our players. But now the biggest difference is teaching kids how to act if you get stopped, if you're driving a car and getting pulled over. Going through the steps, keep your hands on the steering wheel, kill them with kindness.
But these days, doesn't seem like it matters.
No, no. And I'm on a couple of racism committees. I wore a pin this year that said "Coaches versus Racism" every single game, because when the media would see that pin, ultimately they were going to ask me something about it. I think racism is, goes back 400 years. When I was 10 years old, I remember being involved in a cross burning with the KKK in North Carolina. That's been well documented. My father in 1957 was, and this has been well documented, was part of a group that busted up a KKK rally. Where I lived in North Carolina was extremely racist. I worked at a tobacco market where there was white, colored, another bathroom, white, colored, another water fountain. So I've lived that. I'll never forget the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. I lived that. Now, here we are in 2021, and the only difference in today than back in the day is the phone cameras. We catch it on, we can catch it now. We can film it. It's being brought to the forefront. But you can only educate the people in front of you. Like, one of the things I'm proud of in this city is we have a black mayor, Sylvester Turner. We have people of color in major responsibility areas, like the police chief is Latino. So we have people that our kids can look at that look like them, that they can dream one day we can be that. Here's one of the things that I've tried to do, and I got on I think we have 196, or we have 96 black head coaches. And I was just on a Zoom call with all the black head coaches on Sunday. Like Kellen was a grad assistant. One of the things that we're trying to really push, and I'm pushing all the black head coaches to do this, is go to your athletic director. And I'm thinking about, we have 20 men's and women's sports on our campus. We've got to find a way to get more African-American women and men, these kids that are graduating, to go into athletic administration. We've got to get more people that look like us that are making decisions. What we need more than anything else in college athletics is, everybody talks about we need more black coaches, we need more black women's coaches. We need more black administrators, because they're the ones that are making the decisions. We need more black, African-American black people in these search firms, these headhunters that are going out finding these candidates. All I'm doing is stating facts. People are comfortable with people they're comfortable with, and they want to, a lot of times, recommending an African-American coach to a certain school, not comfortable with that. Well, we've got to get people that are making these decisions, we got to get them to be comfortable. And sometimes that comes down to getting more people to look like us. Right. So, and I'm proud of our athletic director, Chris Pesman. We've hired a grad assistant, and we're trying to make it every year being a man and a woman in these administrative positions. You know, like we all have kids that aren't going to play pro basketball. Like I got a kid, like Galen Robinson, for instance. I don't know how much longer he's going to stay in it, but Galen would be an unbelievable athletic director. He's smart, he's articulate, he commands respect. He's a people person.
Business-minded.
Has a business mind. But he's gone off and doing something else. That kid needs to be in athletic administration. One day he's going to look at a guy like Kellen and say, you know what? The color of his skin don't bother me. I'm looking at the content of his character. That's all that should matter. And until we get to that point, the killings, I have no idea how to stop that. You know, gun laws ain't gonna stop it.
Right.
You know, everybody says, well, we got stricter gun laws. That ain't gonna stop the killings. You know, these people, the racist people have had that in their bones. Slavery was 400 years ago. Well, racism was 400 years ago too. You know, what those people have lived through, it's in a lot of ways, it's just, they inherited that idea. It's gotten better, but we've got a long way to go.
I'll say that guys like you, Kwanzaa Martin at Missouri, my mentor, Leonard Hamilton at Florida State.
My guy.
Mike Boykins had a successful year this year. All African-American head coaches. But guys like you are opening doors to guys a ton of guys got new jobs this year. As far as guys that look like us. Got new jobs, whether it's at the mid-major level or at the high major, with Tony at DePaul, even Dwayne, the new AD that left Kentucky that's at DePaul now, and that's my guy, Dwayne Peavy. But guys like you are opening doors for a lot of minority coaches right now. On the women's side as well, like Joni at UGA, who's had a great season, Don Staley at South Carolina.
The lady at Arizona. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
she's awesome. I don't know her, but I love her story.
Yeah.
Right.
I love her attitude.
Great spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her attitude. But you're right, Chris. This was a breakthrough year. Yeah. And I think a lot of this, you know, I remember Stevie Jackson was holding George Floyd's little girl on TV, and she said, "My daddy changed the world." Well, he did. He did. I don't think if that had not happened, we would see as many African Americans being hired. Look at what's going on in the HBCUs now. You know, Eddie George going to coach at Tennessee State, Deion Sanders at Jackson State, and the NBA is putting all this money in HBCUs.
Chris Paul's doing.
Chris Paul. I mean, there's an awakening. There's awakening. Then all of a sudden, what happens in Minnesota, it just puts us back on our heels.
Man.
You know,
Man.
But you know what? We're going to be back on our toes here pretty soon, and we'll go forward, and we're going to get more and more done. It's incremental. We want it to be faster, but sometimes it's better to be the turtle than the hare.
Very true, very true. Like, so going back to the hug again, and I keep saying that because I talked to my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter Paige, about it, and just seeing a minority family celebrate each other and celebrate that win and making it to that milestone and that success. My daughter liked to say, "That's dope." So she was like, "That's dope, Dad," and I showed her, and it made top 10 memorable moments this year for March Madness from Andy Katz. So that experience in itself is just amazing to see.
I think just pouring into each other. You know, and Coach gets, I'll give my dad all the credit. He believed in us, you know, and he inspired us to do great things. What's the responsibility on us now to inspire the next? Coach, and you said it, he's a standard bearer. He holds the standard. It's on us as younger coaches, younger generation, myself, Coach Quantas White, Hollis Price. You know, I'm so glad that you recognized what the hug was, a moment of triumph, of emotional triumph, but maybe it inspires somebody else, you know, to pour into their people. And that ultimately is what my dad did, is he poured into his own people and said, I don't need to go outside of this circle to achieve greatness. I just have to pour into my people and motivate and inspire them. You know, and that's what our challenge is now, is taking the next step from him. You know, he's taken it this far. I want, and the hope is that We got Coach Brooks to Lamar. That's great. Okay, and he brought some people from Houston to Lamar. Now we can start pouring in and inspiring others to do great things. It's like the situation in Minnesota had happened and it knocked us back. Our challenge with our players is now is the time you don't have to be quiet. This is a time unlike any other where it's okay to speak out, and it's not going to be met with just crazy opposition. We're still in this moment where you can be loud, you can be on your toes, you can be proud to be who you are, where you're from, and encouraging them to keep going forward. Don't look at it as, well, the movement's over. No, it's a setback. But there are other opportunities if we'll just keep moving forward. And there are so many, first-time black head coaches. And that's really important. Kim English is a first-time black head coach. Not, okay, hey, we all have a standard now, and we've talked a lot about it as young coaches. We got to do good with this moment.
Right.
My dad's kind of, he talks about all the time. He can see it at the end. Coach Hamilton is at the end. Conzo, us as young coaches got to take it over now. They got us to second base. We got to get it to home plate, and we have to have that mindset. Look, they've taken us as far as they can take it. Us as young coaches, we got to get it all the way home, and we got to do better. We got to do good.
And that's,
when I was coming up, Chris, the coaches I looked up to the most was John Thompson, John Chaney, Coach Richardson, but a guy that doesn't get enough credit is Clem Haskins, and George Raveling. Those five guys, and I remember going to Black Coach Association meetings, and they were strong. That was around the time when Coach Thompson, I was a young guy, Coach Thompson walked off the court in protest of Prop 48. But the thing that gave him the most credibility was Dean Smith, a white man, believed in the same thing. And all of a sudden we started making improvements in academics and getting kids, getting admitted to school a lot easier. But the other thing about the hug is we all have scars on our backs for something, and we have to acknowledge that. But the problem with most people is when they look at other people that look different from them, is that they judge them and then put a period at the end of the sentence. That means that they made their decision, and they're not going to change it. Well, everybody deserves to have a comma. We all have another. We're not done. We all make mistakes. And I think in the moment of that hug, is acknowledgement of the successes and the failures that we've had in our life, and look at us now. So there was no period at the end of my story, and my story still has a comma. Kellen doesn't have a period at the end of his. Our team doesn't. Dejan Giroux's going to go on and do great things with his life, and I think we've helped him. But his responsibility to take it from here. Quentin Grimes, when Quentin Grimes got up and talked to the team afterwards, he couldn't talk. I mean, he was crying so profusely. I'm not talking about sobbing. I'm talking about wailing crying, because he was talking about how much he loved everybody in that room. And that hug had a lot to do with that. Because when we got to Indianapolis, we were either going to win it all and go home happy, or we were going to lose and go home closer than we've ever been, with a love for each other. And that hug kind of captured all those emotions and all those moments at the same time.
We definitely appreciate having you guys on the show. Obviously, we knew we had to come out to Houston, get you guys while you're hot, fresh off the Final Four. And to be honest, you'll be surprised. Our next show, we'll have all the black head coaches in the state of Georgia, as far as college coaches. So we have Rob Lanier, we'll have Gene, the women's coach at Georgia State. We have Amir, the guys coach at Kennesaw State, and we have Joni on the show, the girls coach from UGA. So that's our next episode, and just talking about the scarcity of minority coaches in Division I basketball. So we definitely appreciate you guys on the show. Obviously, we always want to thank UncleNearest, one of our sponsors, and Citizens Trust. Again, we thank Paco and Mel and JT for letting us come here at the Gent Spot, a beautiful barbershop lounge here in Houston. So we just want to say thanks and appreciate you guys once again.
It's a pleasure, and we appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, man.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you for both our sponsors.